Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Dude, I Love That. I'm Liv, and today we're taking a quick pause in the Summer Throwback Enneagram series where I've been typing characters from childhood to teens, movies, TV shows, all that good stuff. And we're talking about a worldwide phenomenon right now, Top Gun, and we're doing the characters from both Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick. So lots to go through today. Now, the interesting thing with this is normally for the typing episodes that I do, I've seen these things so many times. I know these characters super well. I can pull examples at the drop of a hat. Now with this one, I've only seen these movies one time each. And, unfortunately, when you're in a theater, you can't be like writing notes on your phone so you can remember stuff later. And so I frantically got out of the movie theater and I was jotting down everything I could just so that I could bring this to you and actually have some good examples. So thankfully I was able to do that with Top Gun, not so much Maverick. So this won't be the most detailed episode, but hopefully we're able to get through these types and have a lot of fun. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with Maverick. And I am using call signs for this. I'm not using everybody's proper name. Okay, we're just going to do call signs and have fun. So this character was so interesting because we do get to see the progression between the first movie and the next. And so for him, I think a lot of people would have said that he's either a 3 or an 8. And I decided that he was a 3-wing 4. And that might seem a little bit but he's so aggressive or whatever. Why is he not more 8? And I do think he has an 8. I just don't think that's his main type. So yes, we are doing tri-types for some of the characters in this episode. And I think it's going to be so much fun. If you've never heard of tri-types before, I explain it in the last episode. I think I explained it in the Divergent episode. So basically this is like a Miles Teller week over here, but definitely check out those episodes. I'll actually have in the description for this episode, episodes that I've done recently that have all the info on tri-types and also subtypes if you're interested in that, because I will hit on that a smidge in this episode. But for Maverick, I decided on a 3-wing 4 because there's a lot that happens throughout the first movie that you can see is actually very 3-ish versus being 8-ish. And I'll compare him to another character that I believe is an 8. And you can see there's differences. We see Maverick, he's really wanting to show off. He's a showboater. He just is very confident and wants to kind of show off. And that's fun. That's what makes this movie. However, it also gets him in trouble. And so that's where the 8 would be a little bit more on the side of doing what's right and following the rules in this situation. I'm not saying for everything, but I think when they're in such a regimented, intense job, I think they'd be a little bit more prone to follow the rules. And that's something I'll hit on again with that type 8 that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But for Maverick, he definitely exhibits more of that 3. And I think a prime example of this is when he starts singing to Charlie at the bar very early on in the movie. I can't tell you exactly where, because again, only seen it once, but that was a prime example to me. I thought that was so funny. And that just goes to show, 3s, they love being entertaining. They are called the entertainer, and they hold that title for sure. Even when he's he wants to do the flybys, he's doing that not necessarily just for the fun of it. I mean, partly, but he's doing it to make a statement. And so that's something that you'll see 3s do. And I'll check my notes in a minute so I can give you actual examples. But I chose the 4-wing for him because we see throughout Top Gun that basically he's kind of running from this family image, I guess you could say, that he feels has been placed upon him. Now, the type 4, they want to be most authentic to themselves. They want to be known for who they are. They want to be valued and appreciated for who they are as a unique individual. And I think for him, with this kind of overlording image people have of him from his father, he feels an even greater need to break out of that and show people who he is. And I think that's what leads him to make some riskier decisions. But it's also he's saying, this is me, take it or leave it. The other thing that I think really solidified him being a 4 to me is when Goose dies, he has people trying to kind of pull him out of his pain, and he doesn't want that. He wants to sit in that pain. And that's something that you'll see more from a 3-wing 4 versus a 3-wing 2. And I think for him, he felt the need to just absorb all of it and have those authentic feelings versus kind of acknowledging it and moving on, similar to what a type 7 would do. And so that's ultimately why I chose that 4 for him. And then let's talk about why I ended up choosing a 3 super fast. So some specific examples I have here. He's definitely very sure of himself and a little cocky, especially in the first movie. He doesn't back down when he knows something's right. Like in his gut, he definitely goes for what he knows to be right, which can sound very 8ish, but I will explain why I think he has a little bit of that 8 in a sec. He's also great at spinning stories on the spot. There was a scene, and I cannot remember what it is right now, but basically he was able to come up with an answer really quickly so that an issue didn't arise. And that's something that I talked about in the Fault in Our Stars episode where, Gus does that and it's so funny, but that's something a 3 is really, really great at. And then let me just hit on some things from Maverick. So from the second movie. When 3s get older, they really come into their personality, and some of that more show-offy type stuff goes by the wayside. And I think that's because a lot of times they have the energy, and especially males, they've got the testosterone, they've got like all of that, and they want to be kind of more loud and intense, I guess you could say. And I think as they mature, they kind of stop that and they turn their attention as a 3 more towards that 6, because 3 has a connection to 6. And I think they do become more of a loyal, steadfast person. I think they become more stable as they get older, and they take some of that 3ness and actually move it towards helping others. So that's where you kind of see Maverick takes Rooster under his wing a little bit more, and he was willing to risk that relationship in order to potentially save his life. And so by pulling his papers, I mean. And so we see that he reaches this maturity level that is so special, and he becomes such an incredible asset versus, maybe he did things a little bit more for himself when he was younger, but as he matures, he really does start to do things more for the greater good. And that's something that is so incredible about 3s. And when they're healthy and when they really get to maybe like 40s and up, that's what they start coming into. I mean, there are some old souls out there, I guess. There are some 3s that are like that the whole time, but typically that's the progression that you're going to see. And then let's talk about his tri-type super quick. So I decided that I think he is a 3-8-7, and that's where maybe some of that 8 is coming in. Some of the more like protect the underdog, aggression is coming in. And I think even though like that's the entirety of the aggressive stance, I do think that that's what his type is, or his tri-type is. And I think we see more of that 7 when he's younger and his maybe fly by the seat of his pants vibe. But you see that he's always able to get himself out of it. And even though the decisions he makes may not be the best in the moment, they end up setting him up for like something amazing. He messes up and then gets these incredible opportunities. And so that's what like that happens to 8s, like that seems to always be the case where like something will happen, but it'll end up setting them up for something that's even better. And so again, that's where I think he has got a really, really, really good balance of head, heart, gut. And I think again, he really leans on the 3, really leans on the 8. And I think that's why he has issues with Iceman in the first movie. But you see over time, they obviously came together as really good friends and they began to really respect each other. And I think in friendships like that, where you have people that on the surface could look similar, but are deep down very different, they'll either come together and become great friends and they'll start to kind of rub off on one another, or they'll be like mortal enemies, which, is kind of what we see in the first movie. But I did choose a 7 in his tri-type from the head triad because I do think in a way he likes to be spontaneous, he likes to be fun, he likes to enjoy life to the fullest. And so that's where I think we really see that. And he doesn't strike me as someone that deals with anxiety. And remember, 5s and 7s out of the head triad are the ones that deal with anxiety the least. 6s deal with it the most. So anyways, that is all from Maverick. Let's go ahead and move on to Goose. Poor sweet thing, RIP. So for him, I decided that he is a 7-wing 6. And unfortunately, because we don't see a progression with him in the second movie, it's hard to say what he was like outside of this very short time he had in the first movie. But I think for him, we see his friendship with Maverick, and it's so interesting because the 3 and the 7 can often be mistyped for one another, but this movie is an incredible example of why the two were so different. So we see Maverick just kind of naturally glides through, like he's got this undercurrent of nothing can touch me, and Goose kind of rides on that, not in like a insecure, I don't have what he has way, but he gets a kick out of Maverick. And so he's like, I'm along for the ride because I know it's going to be fun. And remember, sevens love chasing fun. They're like the adventurer. They're kind of like adrenaline junkies, which, if I had to say, the job that he's doing is definitely an adrenaline junkie job for sure. And I think also he has that six wing because he's so loyal. I mean, sevens and sixes are very loyal, and the six is actually called the loyalist. And I think for Goose, he wants to go along with Maverick to a point. There's certain things that Maverick will do that Goose is like, I am not okay with this. Like, are you really sure about this? And of course, being a three, Maverick always talks him into it. And they end up getting in trouble. But like I said, they get out of it very quickly. And of course, in typical 7-6 fashion, he makes a ton of these witty jokes. And that's what I think is great about this 3-7 friendship, because the seven keeps things lighthearted for the three. The three motivates and drives the seven even more because sevens are very motivated. It's just, it looks different than an intense motivation that maybe an eight, a one, or maybe even a three would have. And so I think they really do play off each other so well. And I'll talk about his tri-type in a second and why I also think this could be the case. But he kind of plays off of Maverick's personality. I think because of their time spent together and the fact that they are really good friends, I think they have developed a bit of what Krista would call a glow. And her theory is amazing. Go check it out on her podcast, Enneagram and Marriage, if you want to know more. But I think they have developed this kind of work glow where they're really rubbing off on one another personality wise. When you do have that, when you have someone around you that you feel so safe with and that you can open up to, and Maverick even calls Goose family. I mean, your lives are in one another's hands, so obviously that creates a bond, but we see how they each kind of fill in gaps that the other has. And that's what a great friendship and a great partnership is all about. The other really interesting thing that I think people don't want to acknowledge too much about sevens, I think there's this weird stigma that people think sevens are just out there wanting to chase fun and they don't want to have like time where they're working hard and stuff like that. That is a complete lie. Sevens actually love acquiring information. They have that connection to a type 5. Sevens enjoy being able to achieve things and they want to be successful and they want to feel like their presence means something. And so I really like bringing that to the table when it comes to talking about sevens. And so I do want to say Goose wants to achieve things. He takes his job seriously. He's going to have so much fun doing it, but he takes it very seriously. And I think that's where a little bit of the tension comes between him and Maverick, because he maybe doesn't feel like Maverick's taking their future as seriously as he's taking it. And then let's talk about his tri-type super quick. So I ended up choosing a 7-9-3 for Goose. And the reason being, that type 9 does this thing called merging. And I talk about this all the time because I think it's very prevalent in pop culture, but nines tend to mirror personality traits of people that they're with. And this comes from really them wanting to keep the peace, right? The nines are peacemakers. And so to keep harmony and peace in their relationships, they're going to take on some of the personality traits or even body language, things like that of the person they're with in order to cut down on any tension or issues. And so I think we see that a little bit, they're able to play off each other very well. And we see that a lot in that scene where Maverick's singing to Charlie and Goose just jumps right in. He's like, okay, we'll go for it. And maybe he's even a little bit more outgoing than normal. I don't know. We don't really get to see too much of him, but I think that's super interesting. And the other type for him that I chose was a type 3. And again, that kind of goes back to what I was saying before about sevens wanting to achieve. I think he does really want to achieve things. He wants to be an excellent role model for his son. He wants to make his wife proud. He has aspirations for himself. And even though he doesn't take himself as seriously as some others might, he does expect a lot from himself. And I think that's where we really see that 7-3 again. And that's probably why he and Maverick are able to be as good friends as they are, because they both have the 3 and they both have the 7. And then since we're doing first movie right now, let's talk about Iceman super quick. Unfortunately, we don't really see much of him in either of the movies, but I think it's worth it to point him out. So for him, I chose a type 8. And this is where, again, I was saying Maverick kind of gets into a tussle with a type 8. Threes tend to know when they're in the presence of an 8 and vice versa. And I think people really tend to mix up 3s and 8s because they see them, they're both in the aggressive stance. So they do come very full force and they each kind of want the power. They each want to be in control of things. And that's where, again, like I said, they either end up really respecting each other or they end up being total enemies. And so we see that they do have a lot of issues in that first movie, but at the end of the day, because Maverick ends up really saving Iceman, it's like he ends up respecting him and vice versa. And that's what I find really interesting about the relationship. And it's so special to see that in the second movie, through all these years later, they ended up becoming really good friends. And we see how torn up he is at his funeral. And to see that that friendship grew is incredible. And the reason that I ended up choosing an 8 for Iceman is because I knew he was in the gut triad. He seems to just know what's right and he goes with it. And so that's a very gut oriented thing, and it reminds me of, and I always forget his name, but the guy from NCIS that's always like, my gut's just telling me. They're very much that way. And they also want justice, and they kind of want people to follow the rules more than what you'd think, because obviously eights kind of are rule breakers. They are people that blaze trails. And, a lot of times if you're going to blaze a trail, you got to break some rules. And so they think breaking rules is okay when done safely. But Iceman has an issue with Maverick because he's not breaking rules safely. He's doing it to showboat and to one up. And so, that's what causes this tension. And so I think being that he is an 8, he kind of sees the mask, I guess you could say, that Maverick's wearing of like, I've got it all together. I'm better, blah, blah, blah. And he doesn't like that because he's like, that's not genuine. And like, we're supposed to be working as a team and you're not being a team player. But that is why I think Iceman's an 8. And another 8, let's talk about Charlie. So I decided that she is an 8 wing 9. And the reason that I chose that for her is she is extremely confident. She's witty. She knows exactly what's happening and she's able to play right along with it. She doesn't need to suss things out very much. She's, again, very gut oriented. She's like, I know the situation and I know exactly how to play this. And that is typical type 8. An interesting thing with her is we do see that she ends up really falling for him because she sees something in him. I think when they're alone, and especially when he goes over to her house, I think she sees this guard come down and she actually gets to see him for who he is, and instead of like the persona that he puts out there. And she falls in love with that. I think she does get a kick out of him. And that's the thing. They enjoy and get a kick out of a 3 that is a little bit more show offy, but they're not doing it out of a place of arrogance. They're doing it out of a place of fun. And I think she sees that with him and she likes it, but she's also like, can I trust him? I don't really know. And then when they're alone and she has time to kind of see him not quote on, she's like, oh, he's actually really cool. And I think she actually really digs his 4 wing. I think that she finds a lot of vulnerability and authenticity. And, 8s and 4s are really big on authenticity. And I think that's what she ends up seeing with him. And the fact that he has been kind of pigeonholed based on what his dad's done. And obviously, 8s want to give everybody a fair shake. And so I think that's what kind of makes her go, you know what? I think this guy's got something good going on. So I'm going to stick it out and see what it is. And, I wish that we could have seen them together in the second movie, but unfortunately, we didn't. So that is all for Charlie. And then let's talk about Rooster. Oh my gosh. So we're now on to the second movie. And holy smokes, dude. I cannot. This movie was so good. And I really was having a struggle with figuring out what Rooster's type was because I couldn't figure out the dichotomy between the confidence and also this a large amount of questioning. And so I was having this gut feeling that he's probably a counterphobic 6. And I talk a lot about counterphobic 6s in the Divergent episode because, pro tip, one of the main characters in there is a counterphobic 6 that often comes off like a type 8. And so definitely check that out if you want to know more about counterphobic 6s. They're often mistyped. So, you might be a counterphobic 6, but you've mistyped as a 3 or as an 8 or as a 1. But anyways, I decided that Rooster is definitely a 1-to-1 subtype 6. Over time, we see with Rooster, he does really lean on his 3. He's vibrant and he's energetic. And we see in the scene where I can't even say the name of the song because as soon as I say it, it gets stuck in my head for like eternity. But, when he's playing piano and singing that song, we see that he does love entertaining and he's definitely got that 3 vibe, which I think is so fun because 6s do have a connection to 3. And even though it's a connection in stress, don't let that fool you. A lot of times your stress number comes out in many different ways, and it doesn't always have to be when you're like in a bad situation or really stressed out. It more comes in situations where you're maybe more put on the spot or you're in a position where you can show off. And so he does that. He's with people that he's comfortable around. He's at a place where he's comfortable. So he's like, hey, why not? And he gets everybody involved and it's fun. Now, the reason that I ended up choosing a type 6 for him is because he asks so many questions. He wants to know why, how, when, where. He's asking, okay, what is the plan fully before before we get there, because I don't want to be caught off guard, which is something very six. They want to know the plan. And I can say this as a six. I'm like, if I go to a new place, I'm wanting to know what's the parking situation? How long do I need to take to get there? Who am I going to meet up with? How am I going to get to the place I'm going once I park? All that stuff. Like, I want details. And that's something that he wants too. And I mean, granted, the situation is kind of life or death. And so he's like, I want to make sure my ducks are in a row, no pun intended, before I do anything. And so he's the one that's going to bring up questions so that it not only clarifies it for him, but clarifies it for the group, because this is a team effort. And he's like, I don't want so and so over there not knowing the plan and then it impacting me, which again, very six. Now, the thing that was tripping me up about him being a six was really that he seems extremely confident. But then I came to realize he's so confident and sure of himself in his job because he is trained for this. He has spent so much time doing his job. He is so sure that he knows how to operate this plane, even when their planes crash and they're like having to use this ancient plane, ancient, whatever. And so he's like, what am I going to do? I haven't seen all this stuff before, but he's like, don't worry, I'll figure it out. And when a six gets put in a tough situation, they actually are extremely courageous. And again, that's something I talk about in the Divergent episode, but usually people don't understand that sixes in a really stressful life and death, scary situation, they tend to rise to the occasion and they're actually the more level-headed ones, whereas other types can tend to get frazzled. The six is like, wait, let's get this sorted. Okay, you do this, you do that. I'm going to do this. Let's get this figured out. Da, da, da. And so they're really on it and they actually have a very clear head in the bad situations. But when the bad situation's over, they tend to crash. And so that's where we see that he's kind of like, whew, okay, that was a lot. But again, we see him push through even somebody that he doesn't necessarily want to help because he feels like he screwed him over. He still goes to rescue Maverick. And that's something that, the six, they are loyal. He knows that his dad loved this guy and he says, okay, well, I'm not going to leave him out here to die. So here I go. And he does that. And it does end up putting him in a really scary situation. But like I said, the six rises to the occasion and they're going to push past their fear. Well, especially the counterphobic six, not so much the self-preserving or the social six. They're more of, when it comes to fight or flight, they're going to choose flight. The counterphobic six chooses fight. And even though, seeing him was such an interesting situation because he really does have that moment of fear where he does kind of want to do the flight. And he ends up choosing fight because he says, that's what I know is right. I can't leave him out here. I wouldn't want someone to do that to me. And he shows up to the occasion versus doing what may be more comfortable for him, which is flight. And he really does have to like talk himself off a ledge, when they're actually in the mission and he's lagging behind. He's so stressed out and he's like, I don't know if I can do this. And I think a lot of times when you are going into something new, when you're getting out of your comfort zone, you feel that intense pressure of like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do this. Like, what have I done? I've put myself in this situation and now I've got to do it. What am I going to do? And then when like the curtain, opens, it's like, you just do it. You just have this all of a sudden bravery and courage that you didn't have a second ago and you end up killing it. And that's something that I really do want to highlight for the six because they are portrayed as being these little like scaredy cats, like, oh, they're just always terrified. That's really not the case, especially with these different subtype sixes. They tend to be some of the most courageous. And I think the counterphobic sixes, if I'm remembering correctly, maybe it's all sixes, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's counterphobic sixes. They're the most brave on the entire Enneagram. People think that it's eights, people think that it's threes. No, it's actually the six because the bravery means that you feel the intensity of the situation, you feel the fear, but you choose to move past it and you choose to push through. And that's when the breakthrough comes. And I chose a 7-wing for him because I think he does have that lively, energetic personality. You can tell he is outgoing, he is fun. And that's where, again, that piano scene, we see him kind of embrace the fun of the moment. And even though he's a little bit like, why are we all here? What is going on? This seems kind of sketchy. He's like, we're still going to have fun and enjoy things. And I think we're able to even see himself kind of turn off the running faucet of what ifs and whys in the football scene. He's able to turn away from the constant questioning that may be happening in his mind and focus on having some fun. And that's something that you won't see quite as often with the 6-wing 5 because they are more reserved, they're more introverted. And so the 6-wing 7 can often look very 7-ish or very 3-ish because they do have that fun, outgoing personality and they are able to disconnect from the seriousness a little bit more. And for Rooster's tri-type, man, I really do think that he's probably a 6'8" 3. And the reason why is because, again, counterphobic sixes do tend to have eights in their tri-type because they do embrace the bravery, they embrace powering through things, and they don't want things to control or impact them. And so remember that eight, they really want control over their life. That is the thing that they want. They do not want to feel weak. They do not want to exude weakness to other people, especially. They want to feel in control of their life and like they have everything handled. I think for Rooster, he has that eight, but he has the healthy side of the eight where he's like, I'm going to keep my guard up until someone kind of shows that, like, hey, I can be vulnerable with them. And obviously, when you're in the military, you're really going at it with these people. You're basically having to put your life in their hands, and there has to be some sort of trust built there. And so I think he's not quite as, quote, eightish or protective of things as maybe some other eights are, but because of the situation that he's been put in, he's a little bit more vulnerable. And then also, I think he has a three in his tri type because we can tell that he's had these career aspirations his whole life. He's known exactly what he wants to do and he goes for it. And that's something very three. And he wants to be the best. I mean, they said, kind of in one of the opening scenes that they've brought the best of the best here. Like these are the people that excel in their field. And we can tell that he's put in the work, he's put in the time. And even though he was held back 4 years, he still showed up and was like, I'm not giving up on this dream. And that is the tenacity of the three. And then we're going to quickly hit on some other characters that are in Top Gun Maverick. And I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm going to give a very simple overview. We're going to move right past the other ones. Okay, let's go. So Phoenix, so much fun seeing her. I think she added something incredible to the whole lineup. And she actually reminded me a lot of my mom. And that is why I gave her the type of a 5. And I definitely think she's a 5-wing 6. She's got the six part of her that is loyal, and she is questioning and wants to make sure that you're not like sending me into a death trap. She's like, I don't think this is possible or whatever. And she's going to bring up her concerns kind of like Rooster does. But she's definitely very 5-ish in that she's analyzing things constantly. She's scanning, she's making sure that she has all the information that she needs to make a decision or to do her job well. And, 5s, again, they have their area of interest and they want to do well at what they're given. And so she really is trying to be the best steward of her own life, the lives of her teammates, the life of Bob, sweet Bob. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk about him. But she really wants to make sure that she's doing her best, that she's got all the information that she needs to be able to make decisions quickly, because this is not a job where you can hem and haw over what you want to do. You got to make a decision and make it now. And then we'll just go ahead and talk about Bob since we already just mentioned him. Sweet Bob, he is a 9. The scene for me that really just solidified it was when they're at the bar and they're like, oh, when did you get here? And he's like, I've actually been here the whole time. This happens to 9s, and it makes me so upset because 9s actually are like the most powerful in the Enneagram. They have a little bit of all the types. And so 9s actually bring so much to a team or to the table, whatever you want to say. And yet, because they're more quiet and they're more peaceful, they tend to kind of get like left in the dust. And people don't want to really ask them their opinions too much because they assume that they're not opinionated because they don't just all of a sudden go like, hey, what about this? And so they kind of fade into the background. And it's sad because really 9s do have so much to share, especially because they see situations from an entirety. They see things from like every point of view, whereas other types are more inhibited in seeing things like that. And so he probably has so much to say, and people just like ignore him because personality types that go into the military are typically more aggressive. So you're going to see a lot of 7s, a lot of 8s, a lot of 3s, and some 5s, and definitely some type 1s because, right, justice, wanting to be good and wholesome and protect. And so I think poor Bob probably gets thrown in the dust more often than we'd all like to admit, but he's so good and he's so funny. And like 9s are very witty, they're very funny. And so although he doesn't quite get the recognition that he more than likely deserves, we love Bob and he's very 9-ish. But 9s, please do not let anybody make you feel like you don't have something to bring to the table or that your opinions don't matter, because they absolutely do. Oh man, let's talk about Hangman. So this was so funny to me because I feel like what we saw in Maverick was Hangman versus Rooster, and Rooster was like Iceman and Hangman was like Maverick. There we go. And so I think what we're seeing is a young Maverick in Hangman. Hangman's very 3-ish. He's wanting to kind of put himself in the best light. He's wanting to figure out, what does everybody else kind of want me to be? How can I shape myself to be in the good graces of the people in charge? That's something that I actually hit on in the Divergent episode with someone that might be very familiar in this movie. So definitely check it out if you're interested. But Hangman is, he wants to be called up. He's like, hey, I can do this. Put me in, coach. And they hold him back. And we can see that that really frustrates him because he is always trying to advance. He's wanting to get to a certain level in his career or in the eyes of his leaders, or not leaders, instructors. There we go. And so I think for him, any kind of setback feels very personal to him. And that's something that happens to threes. The setbacks do feel like, do they not like me? Like, what's going on? I don't understand. Even though it's usually not personal. It's usually like, this is the best person for the job. And it's maybe not you. Like, you don't have the same giftings this person does. And so, of course, he ends up coming in to save the day at the end. And that's something that he's going to ride that forever. He's going to be like, yes, I was the one. And I think he also ends up really learning to respect Rooster because of his bravery and the fact that he did go back for someone. And remember, because threes have that connection to a six, they are very loyal. And even though Hangman might not have made the decision that Rooster made, he really respects Rooster's decision. And that's what probably is going to lead to them having a very similar friendship to Iceman and Maverick. And last but not least, let's hit on Penny, who is Maverick's love interest in the second movie. And I'm pretty sure, now I'm not 100% here, but I'm pretty sure that this Penny is the same Penny mentioned in the first movie, who is the Admiral's daughter that Maverick kind of had a thing with and then got in trouble for. I mean, what are the odds that there's two Pennies in the same series that like isn't related? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but still. And if I'm wrong, let me know. But I think Penny is a 7-wing 8. And I chose that type for her because she's very exuberant. Like, she just is wanting to do a job that, yes, of course, brings in money, but she's been able to make up her own rules, which is very 7. Remember, they don't like to be boxed into any set of things like rules or expectations. And we can see that she's obviously someone who doesn't get too upset, like in terms of heart wise, when things don't work out the way that she had hoped. Obviously, she and Maverick have had kind of this on again, off again relationship, but she's still able to bounce back and she's still able to kind of treat him without being very heartbroken or upset when things don't go the way that she wished, which is again a very 7 thing. They're able to move past sad feelings, or they're really just able to move past a bummer and get on with it. And then I chose that 8-wing for her because she is very sure of herself. She's aggressive. She's going to tell you what's up. And she does it in a loving way because that's just the 7. And she's also not afraid to speak her mind. She's direct, but she's also kind of thinking things through a lot more before she does them, which is going to be different to an 8-wing 7 who's going to just go from the gut and do it. And so she's very sly with the way that she does things, but it ends up working out so well for her. And of course, every time she brings Maverick back into her life because he admires that. I think he really likes her. And I think potentially he may see a little bit of Goose in her. And so it's familiar and it's like a happy memory to him. And really quickly, I just wanted to say I'm not hitting on the other pilots in this episode because I feel like I really didn't get enough of their personality to see what I thought of them. And I don't just want to like throw a type out there willy-nilly without like any kind of backup for why I chose it. So I'm just touching on people that I got a good sense of their personality in the short time that they were in the show or in the movie, because obviously it's focused on the main characters. But anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Be sure and check back Friday for a brand new episode. And if you're like, I love Enneagram stuff, I want to know my type, summer sessions are still available. So we're going to be figuring out what is your type, what is your wing, your subtype, tri-type, how that moves into your career, your personal life, your family, all that good stuff. And we're also bringing in a ton of pop culture for this one. So be sure and check it out at this post right here, running through the end of July. So make sure you get a move on if you want to do it. Let me know what you thought of Top Gun Maverick, because this movie is like the largest grossing movie in who knows how long. I think it just reached $1 billion, which is so freaking sick. So anyways, thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Bye.